So it's a good morning, almost into the afternoon, to you colleagues. I want to welcome you to our discussion platform. My name is Joseph Kamjanje, and I'll be chairing this session. So I feel very honored to be part of the discussion. So as you have heard the session chair, Prof. Chipungu saying, we've already lost some bit of time. So what we want to do is to go straight into the presentations that are forming part of the discussion here. And I hope that we will have a very useful and productive couple of hours going on from now. Okay, so without wasting too much time, I just want to confirm with the presenters in this panel. We have 4 papers that are supposed to be presented. There's a paper on COVID-19 and residential segregation. I see that there are 3 authors, so 3 presenters. I don't know how they are going to share the responsibilities. Can I just get confirmation that the presenters for that paper are within us? So that's Mrs. Zukogi, Mohammed, and Olawale. Can I get confirmation, please? Okay. Thank you very much. I see that the paper is already on the screen. So I'll give you the opportunity to make your presentation. If it's possible, please let's reduce on the amount of time that has been allocated because we need to go through a lot of the presentation. Colleague.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Abdulafiz Abiodun Olawale. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'll be presenting a paper on COVID-19 and residential segregation, a review of emerging literatures. As we all know, that the world is trying to get a grip of the new normal after the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, and there have been a lot of literatures regarding COVID-19. With a conference of this nature, the Pan-African City Conference on Inclusiveness, it has been observed over time that Blacks across the globe have been subjected to a series of polarization.
Sorry to disturb you. You can control the screen on your side. Your presentation, you can scroll down and up so that you can be in sync with what you are saying.
Don't press it twice. Give me a moment, please. Don't press it twice. Once you press it, take it down too. Because you press it too much. Once you press it. I think we are back now. Every one of us here and across the globe will understand the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic is a large burden that is felt across the globe without leaving anyone behind. But having agreed to that, there are still some certain set of people who are feeling the brunt, who are actually getting more effects of this pandemic when compared to others in some locations. And it is specifically found in racially polarized and disadvantaged communities. By disadvantaged communities, we are talking of communities that are inhabited by immigrants or people that are not actually from that country or that state. Of course, it is not an issue that calls for concern because the COVID-19 has actually affected affected people from certain ethnicity and socioeconomic minorities. For instance, as reported from literatures, if we are talking of certain ethnicity, a typical example is the Latinos and the Black in the United States of America, which of course happens to be the epicenter of segregation, if we have to be factual with ourselves. Although it has been touted as a country of liberty, of COVID-19 pandemic had lifted the lead on some of the key racial issues that are happening in that country. Of course, it is of utmost importance to review the growing empirical studies as far as residential segregation and COVID-19 is concerned. It is on this backdrop that the paper being presented here review empirical literatures on residential segregation alongside the structural and systematic segregation in the face of COVID-19 pandemic. If we are talking of systematic segregation, there are some kind of policies that have been embedded and have been passed as law by the government of these countries that are existing. There is no two way about it. There is no alternative. Segregation is there and it can be felt, although it was managed prior to the emergence of COVID-19. But as we all know, the pandemic has come to lift and expose some of the things that are hidden in our world today. Furthermore, the study is going to be purely based on review of existing literatures and some criteria in order to select the paper that will be reviewed. In order to select the papers that will be reviewed. A moment, please. Yes, the methodology applied for this review is an archival method which focuses on deliberate review of our empirical studies of two variables, the effect of COVID-19 and residential segregation. Definitely data are going to be collected for these studies. The required data are premised on secondary sources, that is to say the literatures that are existing as far as the topic is concerned. Thus, it is divided from the chart we have seen, is presenting the adopted methodology. We go right from the impact of COVID-19 on residential segregation. A total of 104 papers were gotten from there. On further data mining and sorting on empirical papers that have clear methodology, because what we are after is researches that have been conducted empirically and there is a clear methodology. Some researchers are adopted some methodologies that are not that clear. So such papers were screened out. Having screened out the ones that doesn't have clear methodology, it took us down to another 3 sections, which are the effect of COVID-19 on residential segregation as related to infection and death, socioeconomic response and interventions, as well as access to medical facilities and responses. For the infection and death, 9 papers were reviewed. The socioeconomic response and intervention had 16 review papers, while the access to medical facilities and response, 8 papers were reviewed. Altogether, we have 33 papers. Now, straight to the results and discussion. Having given us a brief of what was done via the methodology divided into 3 sections, these are the 3 sections, and the effect of COVID-19 is evident in all these 3 sections from the available research as at the time this paper was written. Although presently there might be additional papers to what is attainable here. In relation to infection and death, it will interest our listeners to know that specifically where this effect of COVID-19 is much felt happens to be the country of liberty, that is the United States of America and some other European countries. Black and Hispanic patients, they actually witness a significant high infection and death from COVID-19 when compared to the whites and Asian patients. As recorded and reported by Anyane Yeboah, Black patients had the highest death rates in comparison to other rates, which actually revealed the lingering and emerging segregation. The reason for this are going to be presented to us in the course of our discussion. Coming next is the socioeconomic response and intervention. It was found and backed with empirical data that the disadvantaged minorities are more prone to the virus attack, which is an externality from residential segregation coming from structural racism. The Black and Hispanic communities are often denied a wider range of medical, economic, social, and other resources, which can be attributed to inequalities in the wealth distribution of these European and American cities. Majority of the Black and disadvantaged minorities are forced to reside in socially disadvantaged neighborhoods. Equally, during the course of this pandemic, it was reported that the mortality and morbidity burden is greatly borne by the Blacks. The reason for this is because there was a law that was put in place then to restrict movement, the lockdown, the social distancing. However, on a critical look at it, the Black and disadvantaged communities, most of them are engaged in basic employment sector. Are we to talk of driving? Are we to talk of cleaners whose services are required on a daily basis? This exposes them to contracting and contacting the virus, of which upon getting back to their neighborhood, which is actually segregated, the basic medical activities and social interventions are not there. Equally, the European governments and United States came up with some fund, a COVID relief fund. It will interest us that majority of people that benefited from this relief fund are whites, leaving behind the Blacks and the disadvantaged community, who happen to be the ones at the forefront. They are the ones that you will see at the clinics, at the hospitals. They are all engaged in basic employment. And furthermore, on the issue of access to medical facilities and intervention and responses, the access being given to Blacks and other races in the European nations and US are restricted. The medical responses and food security for the colored, they seem to be sidelined by government interventions. Equally, there are laws banning immigrants from accessing health care and tele-health for services in the United States. No. Conclusion. To conclude, let me share my screen. To conclude, the pandemic burden has been largely felt in racially segregated places and disadvantaged communities that are mainly resided in by people of color. We all are not oblivious of the fact that by referring to people of color in European countries and the United States, they are referring to immigrants that are not actually from. However, in the United States, there are Black Americans who are equally referred to as people of color, despite the fact that they are citizens of that country. The USA remains the country with a disproportionately high rate of disparities and segregation. It is evident even before the pandemic. After the world has gotten the pandemic under control, the cases are still being there, looking at us in our face. Other developed nations like the UK are equally guilty of obvious systematic segregation. A typical example is a kind of intervention on getting loans to secure apartments in the UK, where anybody that is of color have no access to such loan or such intervention. People of color and inhabitants of structurally disadvantaged neighborhoods of cities will continue to be at the recipient of pandemic, the current one, and equally subsequent ones. It is, however, recommended by this review that existing housing, education, employment and healthcare, and all other policies that currently contribute to the poor health for the disadvantaged should be abolished. This study has now revealed a kind of research gap that needs to be tapped into by scholars and researchers in the field of segregation, equity, and equally environmental justice. Because if we are all living in a community and some people have access to some basic facilities at the expense of others, then where is the equity we are all preaching? Where is the attainment of the sustainable development goals that the United Nations is fronting? New policies are needed to promote health equity for all in the global human settlement, particularly in places that have been identified to have a very great and high number of segregation, like the United States, and which is the country that is mostly known for segregation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to you and your team. I'm feeling very guilty as the chairperson for not having given you enough time to make the full presentation, but thank you so much. You raised some very, very important issues. I just wanted to draw parallels, with the issues that you're talking about, that the people that were most affected with under COVID-19 were already the most vulnerable anyway. So the challenge is almost like it has been doubled. So really, thank you very much. So what we are trying to do in the interest of time is that we will hold all questions until the 4 papers have been presented. So please stay logged in because I'm sure that there will be very interesting questions coming your way. But what you have also done is to put a lot of pressure on the other presentations that are coming because you were able to do your presentation well within time. So I want to call upon the next presenters and I think they are led by my very good friend Tando. Tando, so can you confirm that you are ready to make your presentation?
Thank you very much. I am ready. I'm not sure if I should upload it myself or you will do that for me.
I think just go ahead. I don't know. I think you should have the rights to upload. Sylvia, can you confirm? Does he have the right?
Someone needs to unshare.
I've shared the present. Is this not your presentation?
Oh, this is the one.
Yes. You can control the screen on your.
Okay.
I will give you the rights.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So please go ahead.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Good morning, colleagues. It's afternoon. My name is Tandole Tumteto. I am a master's candidate in construction management at Nelson Mandela University. Today, I will be presenting to you a research study on solid waste management and local economic development using a case study of Ekupumleni Township in Dlambe Municipality in the Eastern Cape, near Port Alfred. I can't control the screen.
On your keypad, can you scroll down or up?
No.
Click on the screen on the presentation, and then you should be able to scroll down or up. Alternatively, I'll scroll down for you.
Yeah. Can you just scroll down for me?
You are scrolling as we speak.
It's a problem.
I'll scroll for you. I'll remove the rights. I'll scroll for you. It's all right.
You can scroll down. Solid waste management and local economic development are global issues that have gained interest in the international community regarding sustainable development, that is in form of economic, social, and environmental development. Thus, they need holistic approaches and integrated evaluations for their solutions. Solid waste, as we know, that it is linked with urbanization and economic development, because as countries are urbanizing and economic development, there is a more generation of waste. In sub-Saharan African countries, we are in the process or in the middle of urban transition, whereby the population is doubling each year to double between 2010 and 2035. According to the report of the UN Habitat, improvising waste management services is one of the challenges that is brought by urbanization. The global solid waste generation keeps on increasing as population is increasing, as I said before. Many countries, therefore, around the globe are not able to keep up with management of these huge amounts of waste that are being generated. You can scroll down. As a result, the generation of waste that is not managed properly poses on people's health and as well as the environment. Municipal waste management composition varies from one place to another significantly. The determination of the quantity and the composition of that waste is very important to be able to devise appropriate handling and management of these wastes. South Africa is one of the countries that is experiencing, amongst other developing countries, a huge increase generation of solid waste. This is in the face of dwindling municipal funds. As a result, it is not managed effectively and efficiently, especially in low-income settlements that are most disadvantaged. You can go down. The recent global coronavirus pandemic outbreak since 2020 has brought a strong focus on challenges faced by cities and townships. The COVID-19 national lockdown and discourse has highlighted the importance of informal sector of the economy in sustaining the community livelihood. In terms of waste management, collection of recyclable waste, and waste separation for the purpose of recycling. Solid waste is a resource that has a great potential to create opportunities as all countries are embarking on economic activities, which the brainchild of local entrepreneurship, because it has been proven beyond that during this period, one cannot rely in formal employment, but one needs to make other means to get income to sustain their livelihoods in case they lose their jobs. Attempts have been done in townships in South Africa before to use waste as a resource and stimulate local economic development through projects. For example, is the Kim Wells Joe Slovo Community Project in 2018, which was specializing in recycling and then ended up building the walls using recycled bottles for this purpose. So this study aims to examine how can solid waste be utilized to stimulate local economy in Ekhupumleni Township in Ndlambe Municipality. You can go down. This is just a picture of the area, the jurisdiction of the area in Ndlambe Municipality. It is in the southwest of the Eastern Cape, between East London and Port Elizabeth. This area where my study is based, this case study is based. It is near the Indian Ocean. It's just for you to have an idea where is the location, near Kenton-on-Sea. It's a township near Kenton-on-Sea, Ekhupumleni Township. You can go down. The research design and methods for this study. The researcher employed a mixed method design, inclusive of qualitative and quantitative methodology, under pragmatism paradigm. Target population of the study was 242. Data was collected from 85 respondents. Systematically sampling was employed to the community members of Ekhupumleni Township. Municipal officials that were targeted were 4, local business owners were 2, and local not-for-profit organization were 2, and were purposefully sampled. Data collection tool was used for the residents in the community was a questionnaire, and then interviews for municipal officials, local business, and NGOs. Data collected was then preceded by the review of related literature. Field study also made use of observation and photo analysis. Data was entered into Excel for analysis, and then the data from the interviews was thematically analyzed. You can go next. I will just present to you the results of this study. The level of education to community members of Ekhupumleni is very low. The blue, which is 7%, indicates that there is a 7% of the targeted population that went to university, which is a small number. And then the people that went to secondary, but some didn't finish, is 47%. And then those who went to primary and did not pass on to secondary school were 27%. 9% represent people who didn't attend school, and then 10% represent others in terms of the study. And then employment status, you can see that the large bar is unemployed people within the community, meaning that many people are unemployed. Some are retired, some, which are few, are self-employed, and most of them are part-time employed, meaning that they go on few days, and then there are very few that are full-time employed. You can go down. The sector of employment is categorized into 3: public, private, and other. Many of them on those categories indicated that they are employed, which is 50% by the public sector, whilst the majority of them are in the private sector. Private sector refers to them also being working in farms that are nearby, working as assisting in the households in the nearby town, and then few percentage is other forms of employment, meaning that self-employed and other categories. The waste typologies generated in this community, the high number that is generated on the type of waste is cans and metals, followed by papers and cardboards, followed by plastics, and then followed by bottles. And then there's a few percentage of old appliances and clothes. You can pass by on the next page. Waste recycling. The results showed that 62% of participants do not practice recycling of waste, whilst 38 of them do practice waste recycling. The results shows that the items that are recycled by the residents include cans, papers, and bottles, which are the larger numbers of the waste that is generated within the community. Business establishment. The results show that 71% of respondents indicated that they would love to start a business in terms of entrepreneurship and SMME development, whilst 29% of those did not show any interest in starting any business. Challenges that are hindering the residents to be able to start business, especially business that will then include waste management services, include that funding constraints, lack of employment opportunities, so that they can be able to finance the start and the ongoing of the business, lack of land to do a business, capacity to start and manage the business. Capacity also refers to the funding constraints, as well as human resource and skills that are required to establish a business. Spaces for operations of their business also relates to the issue of land. You can pass on the next page, please. Next page. Municipal interviews. The summary of the results from the municipality officials show that the municipality seeks to support waste recycling and minimization activities through different initiatives that includes a building of EcoSun Green Village that has a multi-purpose center that will then accommodate or be a facility for waste management within the area and the surrounding areas, and through other school-based programs on recycling. Then the local business indicated that they do not participate at all in waste recycling as they do not see value on that. Also, they don't have any plans for managing their waste. They just discard waste as a waste to be collected by either a third-party company that is interested on waste or anybody who wants to collect it. You can pass on the next page, please. The discussions of the results in summary. The results shows that the majority of residents in the community are not well educated. This means that they have low skills to be employed in the formal sector. The results are showing that the majority of the community members are not employed. This means that the majority are living in poverty with no income to be able to sustain their livelihoods. The majority of residents are employed in informal sector. In public sector, they are if they are employed, they occupy low skill occupations with low incomes, meaning that that income is not enough to sustain one's livelihood, to pay the basic necessities, school, and other expenses for a household. All these types of waste generated are easily recyclable and reused. For example, cans, bottles, and plastics. The community of Ekhupumuleni do not practice waste recycling, meaning that every waste that they generate, they just dispose, or rather take it to black plastics to be collected by the municipality, and do not see in that way value in that waste, such that they can be able to do something to get money from that waste. Ekhupumuleni Township residents have a great interest to establish a business, but are faced with various challenges that includes resources and capacity. You can pass on the next page. The conclusions of this study says as follows. The township in Canton-on-Sea has a great potential to utilize waste as a resource to sustain their livelihoods through recycling and introduction of recyclable materials to markets. The waste generated is highly in demand and have more value when they are sold, or even when they produce something out of it. Through these initiatives of recycling. Municipality is not supporting the communities enough, and it is not capacitating the communities to utilize the waste or see waste as a resource to gain income for the purpose of LED, through training, awareness programs, and in terms of infrastructure, because I think those are the key issues that the municipality can intervene and be able to support the surrounding communities. Entrepreneurial culture in the community is very high, even though people are hindered by financial constraints and no space to start their business. There are no local markets to sell recyclables in the community. We can pass on the next page. The recommendations based on this study are as follows. The reduction, recycling, reuse, and recovery, meaning that it's 5 R's of waste, is very important to create substantial opportunities in the townships that the township needs to be encouraged by all means to make use. It can be encouraged to reduce or recycle or to reuse or to recover waste in form of incentives, subsidy, and other forms of support, because they don't have means and they don't have encouragement to be able to do that. Partnerships between relevant stakeholders, meaning that the municipality residents, community, local businesses and NGOs needs to be established and strengthened such that it addresses the issues of waste management. Community members need to be more capacitated for business and waste management awareness programs, where in terms of programs and workshops and short-term training programs. The municipality needs to be capacitated in terms of human resource, infrastructure, and financial resource, because the people that are responsible for waste are dealing with other things from other departments. There is no specific directorate or department that is responsible for waste. It is attached on a relevant department, meaning that there are functions on that department. Waste is not a priority. All local schools need to participate in waste management programs, and not only one or selected schools needs to be selected by both the stakeholders or as the management of school decides to do so. They need to encourage their students or learners to participate in such programs. Communication is the key between the relevant stakeholders so that people can play their part in terms of managing waste. Incentives will play a very critical role in encouraging community members to manage their waste. This can be in a form of when they bring their recyclables, they are given money or they are given things that will assist them to be able to live and to be able to be encouraged. Extended producer responsibility needs to be enforced and encouraged because the local business, even those in retail that are producing more waste, are not taking any responsibility to be able to manage waste or play a critical role, as they are also part of the problem. You can pass on the next slide. The development of waste management facility close to the township or townships and Canton-on-Sea needs to be facilitated and executed. The establishment of local markets for selling recyclables and performing recycling activities needs to be established and to be prioritized. Secondary resources needs to be recovered in waste streams and introduced back again in the local economy that deals with manufacturing so that employment opportunities can be then open, meaning that we need to bring local markets that can then deal with this issue. There is a need to take responsibility, leadership, and advocacy by all parties that are involved, starting from the municipality and communities and local businesses and NGOs, so that they can be involved in ensuring that they manage their waste within their community. Thank you very much, Chair. I think this is the last slide. Not sure if I'm still within the time.
Thank you very much, Tando. Yeah, you managed to keep the time. I would want to hold any like summarizing comments that I have until we get to the next paper, which is following almost the same lines along with what you've been presenting. And this paper is talking about similar issues, the role of solid waste management in economic development, but it's a case of Nelson Mandela Bay. I don't know whether we've got that presentation ready. I see Sibo is on, she's online, so perhaps we can, are you ready to start? You are muted, so please can you unmute? Sorry, Sibo, you're still muted. We can't hear you. I think there's something wrong.
You have unmuted Sibo, but we still cannot hear you. Perhaps try also joining with your mobile device for audio purposes. Do you have the link on your emails? Okay. Room 4.
Yeah, so sorry, colleagues. I think we'll be going on quite soon.
Good afternoon.
Hello, how are you doing? There's just some feedback, but I think please go ahead and let's see.
Mute your sound on your laptop.
I've done that. Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, we can hear loud and clear. Please proceed.
Okay, can I please share from my screen because I've summarized my presentation?
You may go ahead.
Okay. So greetings to our chair and also our co-chair, all others and all other colleagues listening on different platforms. So my name is Sibongangani Mgomezulu. I'm doing PhD in construction management under the supervision of Professor Mbanga. So the research I'm going to present today is based on waste management, and it's also part of my PhD. I'm only going to focus on the literature side of things. Okay. My topic is the role of solid waste management in economic development. So in today's world, economic growth and urbanization continue to trigger environmental degradation. Urbanization goes with excessive use of resources, and economic growth is stimulated by urbanization. So both these factors pose a great threat to the surroundings and also the environment, and make it challenging for waste to be properly managed. So poorly managed waste make it impossible to achieve sustainable development goals. So one person can ask, how is that even related? So by looking at this diagram that I've displayed here, out of these 17 goals, 12 of them are directly linked to solid waste management. So this emphasizes the importance of integrated and sustainable waste management practice. So if solid waste management practice can be properly implemented and waste technologies can be introduced to our communities, it will substantially contribute to a better living condition and better health of people who are currently lacking service. It can also prevent litter and also plastic flow from entering oceans. It can also contribute in the climate change mitigation, and also help restore the terrestrial ecosystem. So if this whole process or solid waste management practice is properly implemented, it can provide decent jobs for people, and that can be introduced as the way out of poverty. So although the solid waste is at this current moment, solid waste is viewed as an environmental concern, it's also viewed as something that just needs to be disposed. But if it's managed properly, it can be utilized as an instrument of business and economic development. This has then stimulated the need for this investigation of the role of waste that the solid waste can play in economic development. In addition, there is lack of study. The paper conducted a systematic review of studies related to solid waste management. It took studies from 2013 to 2022, which is 10 years. It's looked at major academic journals found in Google Scholars. As you can see, in total, the journals that were retrieved are 389. So I took a global journals, including African and South African journals. So I'm gonna touch base on the relationship between the economic development and municipal waste management. So I'll start by defining municipal waste management. It is seen as an element of environmental order making, which is one of the areas of sustainable development. While on the other hand, economic dimensions involve creation of new markets and opportunities for sale growth, cost reduction through efficient improvement, and reduce energy and raw material inputs, plus creation of additional values. So urbanization ends up overwhelming the system and the capacity of the municipality to even provide basic services. However, besides that challenge, the misuse of public finance can also result in the lack of service delivery. Unfortunately, this is more visible in solid waste management. So economic development and urban population density influence the generation of solid waste. As it is remarked that the greater the economic prosperity and the proportion of urban population equals to the greater the amount of solid waste produced. So if focusing on waste to wealth, there is an urgent need to find strategic solution like converting waste to wealth for urban communities. Converting waste to wealth can make a positive contribution to the local economic development, and that can be done through three parts, which is job creation, investment in infrastructure, and income. It can also help promote sustainable societies and increase the long-term sustainability of energy supply by reusing the waste. But unfortunately, there is lack of knowledge, which deprives our communities and also our local municipalities to exploit these niche markets and business opportunities that goes with solid waste management. The community's capacity to embrace solid waste management as an economic resource, as you can see, or let me just start by saying, if you observe from the fraction of the municipal solid waste, the high rate of it is made up by the household waste. Therefore, the way the communities manage waste is crucial in the solid waste management system and in the ability of it to use resources efficiently. So the most effective tool for solving the problem should be enhancement of reducing, reusing, and recycling behaviors, which is 3R behaviors. So by applying the 3R, it is more effective where it is applied where the waste is originally generated, which is on our household, industries, construction sites, and also waste treatment sites, and also commercial and government office. So this table or this graph shows that the line of insignificant and significant. So as you can see, the most influential level is, sorry about that, is based on the attitude to personal waste generation. So it starts from an individual person before it goes to the whole entire community or to government or the municipality. So Among other challenges of waste management within communities, there is lack of funds. There's also lack of environmental campaigns, which should be provided by local municipalities. There's also limited technology, and people's attitude towards waste management is also affecting solid waste management process. As it stands, informal waste collectors within communities are negatively stigmatized and also exposed to abuse. Alongside with this conflict of increasing waste generation and scarcity of land for waste disposal, promotion of waste separation at household level should be a priority. I'm gonna touch base on the proposed approaches on how waste management can be used to enhance economic development. And this can be done through the adoption of circular economy, by introducing incentive scheme, and also by converting waste to energy. So circular economy aims to decoupling value creation from waste generation and resources use by radically transforming production and consumption system. It is a new method of economic growth that benefits businesses, social and environment, as against the linear model of we take, we make, then we waste. This figure here shows the concept of circular economy and illustrate that in the inner circle, the demand is less. So we use less resources and energy. So it's more economical. So as long as we're using the 3 R's, few natural resources are consumed, meaning less generation of solid waste. The outer circle represent disposal, which results in high level of waste generation and environmental degradation. So circular economy has a potential, can be seen as a potential solution to make better use of resources. And if all stakeholders should try their best at this level to adopt this concept. There is also an option of converting waste to energy. So more of recent studies have tried to investigate the recycling behaviors and indicate that economic incentive as well as education and communication plays a very important role in initiating more sustainable behaviors towards recycling. There is a method called pay as you throw. It's where the inhabitant of the municipality pay according to what they produce. So you pay, they charge the inhabitant, the municipality charges the inhabitant according to the amount of waste they produce. This method needs a well-developed infrastructure where there's different collection of waste hubs as well as good level of citizenship awareness. Its performance increase the collection rates of recyclables. There's also an option of incentive-based sources separation model where it was introduced in one of the towns in China. So after 1 year, when they came to check if the model is working, they found out that the waste production rate was reduced by 87.3%. And from the model, they were able to make 40 rands, 27 ton per ton. This then proved that incentives have a direct influence on waste recycling. Then we have a proposed option of converting waste to energy. Waste technologies and innovations that are acceptable and well implemented by actors can benefit the citizen and the municipalities, and the benefits are much higher as compared to using a conventional method of collecting and disposing municipal solid waste. A study was conducted with an intention to link solid waste management and shortage of energy, and also applying this method of converting waste to energy. So where the study was conducted, the municipality was producing 620 tons of solid waste per day. So after the whole process was done, where they converted the energy to converted waste to energy, they found out that the municipality was able to produce energy to light more than 1,000 houses. It has been determined that municipal solid waste can also have nitrogen oxide and sulfuric oxide concentrated in the waste, so they are able to extract biogas from it, and biogas can be used to heat and also cook and also provide electricity. Thus, it can be concluded that converting municipal waste to energy can be utilized as a tool for power efficient as well as economic efficient and environmental friendly way. In conclusion, the literature reveals that there is a positive relationship between economic development and municipal waste management. So economic development promotes urbanization. As a result, it promotes high generation of waste. So in most countries, we have high waste generation rates, which end up in landfills, and this negatively affects the environment. And unfortunately, the lack of knowledge deprives the urban resident to recycle waste and stops us from creating income and energy. Communities have not yet fully embraced solid waste management as an economic resource. There is low rates of waste separation at household level, and also informal waste collectors are negatively stigmatized. Communities are also considered as a key role players for municipal solid waste management. Separation of waste should be a policy priority, as it can improve waste management practices and sustainable development. It can be recommended that local communities or municipalities should encourage solid waste to start from where it is produced in order to fully achieve the possibility of using waste to enhance economic development in urban areas. It can also be recommended that states must provide educational campaigns and encourage more positive attitude towards waste management technological practices. Lastly, solid waste practices of the 3 R's, which is reduction, reuse, and recycling, still need to be emphasized to citizenship. Developing countries should formalize informal waste collectors and make policies that support and protect this sector. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sibo, for your presentation. Quite informative, but also already bringing in some very critical issues that we need to try and understand how best we can deal with them. at individual, at local authority level, but I also like the way that you have managed to bring even the country into the picture. So thank you very much. I want to take the opportunity now to move to our last paper, which is going to talk a little bit more about income generation. I think it's still the same thread that we are following to do with local economic development. This paper is going to be presented by Mosia. I think we are already showing the screen. Please go ahead.
Right, thank you very much, Chair. Let me get straight into it. So I'm presenting a paper coming from my PhD study. I'm a candidate for PhD at the Nelson Mandela University for PhD in construction management. So I will talk very briefly about the purpose of the paper and also just give you a bit of a background, a theoretical framework that we have considered, talk about the design and the methodology and the findings, both from household surveys as well as data that we have collected and the data analysis from the key informant interviews. And towards conclusion, I will just talk about governmentality theory in the context of the Vulindlela self-help housing program and make some conclusions. So the primary objective of the paper was really to examine the effect of governmentality of the Vulindlela self-help program. The governmentality of the Vulindlela self-help housing program and the effect of that governmentality on income generation by beneficiaries. In doing that, we had to look at the design and how the Vulindlela program was implemented, and whether it was in line with policy intention to deliver income opportunities to beneficiaries. And we also had to assess the skills and the beneficiary participation and the beneficiary satisfaction. And we then examined challenges that cooperatives experienced in implementing this program. So the paper uses Foucault's theory of governmentality. In that way, we looked at rationalities and practices of self-help and the technologies that comes from that theory in examining the program. So the technologies that we assessed in the program, self-esteem, technology of power, technology of self-responsibilization, and the market. Okay, my slides are not rolling anymore. Okay, there we go. Right, so just as a way of background, outcome 8 of government is about improved quality of households. And also the biggest problem we have observed from literature about settlements and delivery of houses is poor planning and also a lack of participation of beneficiaries in the construction of these units. And there is also a lack of spatial transformation, as noted by Turok, that most of these settlements get located in areas far away from urban centers and resulting in poverty traps with a lack of investment. And so now driving beneficiaries of these houses to sell their houses in the black market or even rent them out. So the people's housing process was introduced to try and mitigate some of these challenges, but more so to create employment and income opportunities for beneficiaries. The people's housing process was later revised into PHP, but other authors also note that, like Bowman notes that the program has not been implemented correctly and has not been implemented according to policy. So just briefly on the origins of self-help housing, we have noticed from literature that Turner seems to be accredited for this particular concept, but also a number of scholars, Tao, define self-help housing as having been an advantageous program for groups who are trying to solve their housing needs by providing labor. But there is also housing delivery through the self-help that was noticed in the early 60s and in the early 70s in developing countries. But I think John Turner's work in the World Bank seems to have really influenced how self-help has been adopted in a number of countries, including South Africa. In our South African context, I think in the early 60s, the Bantustan around apartheid government was one of the first self-help initiatives that was initiated. We are focusing mainly on institutionalized self-help housing process. There are 3 types of self-help housing typologies that are coming from literature: laissez-faire, aided self-help. But in the case of the study, because we primarily focusing on low-cost housing and low-income housing, we therefore focusing on institutionalized self-help. This involves a group of people who organize themselves as cooperatives. We call them housing cooperatives, and this group may also collectively contribute labor, support each other, receive technical advice and training, but able to negotiate with the market, acquire land, acquire credits, etc. So the theoretical framework we've used is the mixed. We're using the mixed method, but the theoretical framework is Foucault's governmentality theory. We've used this theory to provide a lens through which we can make a meaningful assessment of the behavior of participants. But a number of scholars also believe that this governmentality framework emerged around the 20th century by the French philosopher Michel Foucault, who combined this term of government and the rationalities, government and rationalities, hence governmentality. And it is explained, this theory, by many different scholars as a theory that explains how certain rationalities inform behavior of citizens and how government really drives the conduct of citizens. They call it the conduct of conduct of oneself, how certain things by government could be achieved as outcomes by just coercing a behavior, a particular behavior of citizens towards achieving that particular outcome. Hence the term of governmentality. And Mieni and others are calling it the art of governing. And this includes the use of technologies and instruments and rules like procedures and policies to coerce particular population towards achieving particular outcome. Sometimes it can also be a use of power by government, for those who are not conforming. And therefore, governmentality is really about assembling a number of instruments and practices and rationalities informing particular government interventions. And they call these rationalities and technologies, and they're applicable universally, but they're context specific to address a particular problem at a particular time space. Mozenda and others also noted that governmentality and neoliberalism are also very much related, where the use of enterprise and commercial values are applied in our daily human lives. So in the context of Vulindlela program, I've been examining this theory as depicted on the slide. So I'm looking at the technologies from the governmentality theory: technology of self, technology of power, and technology of control and market and responsibilization, and how these have played themselves out in enhancing the income opportunities by beneficiaries, but also how they have influenced beneficiary satisfaction, beneficiary participation and involvement, and the broader design of the Vulindlela program and the number of stakeholders, multi-stakeholders who are involved, including cooperatives and technical support organizations and government departments. Right, so briefly about the area, it's in Pietermaritzburg, an area previously affected by violence, and number of Amakosis, tribal authorities, and the area was also divided into wards according to South African demarcation rules. And we focus mainly on Ward 3 and 9. And in terms of the research design and methodology, the study really used mixed method interpretivist paradigm. And the data was collected through in-depth interviews with 9 key informants from officials who were involved in the implementation of the program, both at national and provincial, as well as cooperative directors. The study also collected data from households. We we had a household survey of about 80 participants, and the anonymity was obviously reserved for people who participated in the interviews. Sampling was a purposive snowballing sampling method to recruit participants, because we had to also select these participants following a criteria. As mentioned already, 80 household survey respondents selected randomly. Now, with the findings, what was really interesting was that from a demographics point of view, the participation was about 50% female respondents and 40% male respondents. This was an interesting observation also, that most of the respondents were mainly African, which describes the area and the people who are really benefiting being predominantly an African tribal area. So on the research findings, we also had to test if the household beneficiaries had any income benefits from the program by testing 3 statements, whether the respondents earned an income directly from being involved in the Vulindlela program. Then statement 2 was around respondents using their house to generate an income. So here we're testing whether they would have considered to use renting out a house or opening a salon or a spaza shop or any other form of economic benefits they may be deriving from that particular house. And statement 3 was also about whether the respondent had a secondary knowledge of someone who benefited from the program, which means who earned an income from the program by just being involved in the program itself. Quite interesting was the result as depicted here. Most of these household beneficiaries, 100% of them will not have had an income, but this was not surprising because we were not targeting beneficiaries who were employed, but we were targeting beneficiaries who received a household. But what was an interesting observation was that 41% of these respondents have experienced a statement to be true that they had secondary experience, meaning they had knowledge of someone who had been involved and have been employed in the programs, and they therefore had benefited and actualized and received some form of income. So that was quite an interesting observation from a secondary experience, knowing of someone. And 42% of households also said they use the house to generate income. So this could be selling, this could be renting it out. So they have considered creative means to generate income. We then also tested through regression analysis the relationship between the skills that were provided to the program beneficiaries and their employability confidence levels. What we then found out was that there was indeed a positive relationship between the skills and the employability confidence of those who received skills. On average, the employability confidence level of beneficiaries that obtained skills from the program was 1.8, higher than those who did not get the skills. Obviously, controlling the other independent variables, we had about 3 independent variables. So the finding was statistically significant that at 1% level, the statistical significance of how their employment confidence has been boosted because of the skills that they have received. Now coming to participation, we then found that 4% of respondents understood EPHP policy and also they were involved in the policy formulation or were consulted and they were involved in the program. However, 75% did not understand the policy, but participated in the policy formulation and consultation meetings about the program. So that was an interesting observation. Again, if we compare 75% not understanding and also look at the education status that I've shared earlier about the participants, low levels of education there. Then on beneficiary satisfaction, we asked also whether the beneficiaries would have been happy about the house and about the overall program. And it was quite interesting that most, about 29% who were consulted on the building choice were consulted about the building choice of their house. They were given 2 choices and 71% were not consulted. But this held an implication on their level of satisfaction. You will see in the middle graph here, there was high levels of dissatisfied beneficiaries, which is seen now in this particular slide, one level detail down. So when we ask them about satisfaction around the builder, around the design of the house, around the construction materials, but also overall about the process itself, most of them at 50% were highly dissatisfied, and 19% extremely dissatisfied, but only about 5% that were satisfied. And when asked also if they will consider building or appointing a builder of their own, acquiring their materials, the other graph would have shown they would rather have preferred to do it themselves rather than to have the house built by cooperatives. So another observation again, I think it's just further breakdown again around the builder satisfaction, the design satisfaction, and the material. You can see the statistics here. The house quality, when we asked them whether they were happy about the house quality, they were satisfied overall about the house quality, although the dissatisfaction was mainly about cracks, leaks, and other quality issues that affected their homes. And on interviews, the findings around challenges experienced by cooperatives is on the slide. Group dynamics was a big factor affecting cooperatives, and also delays in the community establishment processes or community engagement processes in the beginning, lack of sustainability planning for the program. Other challenges were also around the lack of a model to guide the implementation of the program, a lack of understanding of the policy itself. You would have seen on the slides around understanding and whether they were consulted or not. Those who were consulted, they still said they did not understand the policy. And also they cited political interference. So this table here summarizes the challenges, the 5 challenges that I've just summarized. Now, on income opportunities, a number of officials, national official NO1, national official 1, and provincial official 1 also indicated that a number of cooperatives benefited financially from the program to an extent that one cooperative in steel framing, they're providing steel frames for the houses, now supplies to other provinces like the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. And they have also had more employees recruited, and their net value was about close to 60 million at that particular time. So clearly the program had an impact on income for cooperatives as well as households. Now, in terms of governmentality theory, like I said, it's those technologies. I'm not going to explain them too much, but what is interesting from governmentality theory, looking at the program from a knowledge and a power point of view, is that most of these beneficiaries' households were low skilled, with most of them 75% having matric or below, which means they were a vulnerable group. From a power perspective, they were vulnerable in that sense because they may not have been able to influence or engage with the policy itself or the program itself, or take advantage of the market and the enterprising opportunities that the program was delivering to them. So the individuals who may not have had power to influence the program clearly because of the dynamics around the education status, etc. Controlling and the conduct of beneficiaries, now going back again to governmentality theory, conduct of conduct. We have also observed that in the findings, some of the beneficiaries and the officials pointed out that most of the power was supposed to be with communities in decision-making around the implementation of the program, but it ended up being VDA, the Vulindlela Development Association, a community enterprise that took over and had more of power. So in a way, this implies that the true power and control lied with Vulindlela rather than the community itself. It's lied with the Vulindlela Development Association. Technology of self, again explained by faculty as individuals, understanding certain practices and understanding themselves and having some aspirations. 50% of households also, you can see this technology playing it out in the Vulindlela program, because 50% of households participants were highly dissatisfied. So they would have to have preferred a particular house or a particular builder, but that technology of self was limited for them. 41% of beneficiaries extended their houses, clearly showing that the program was giving them this, but maybe from a self needs point of view, it was not really meeting their needs. Technology of the market, how individual desires and individual identities would have played out in the Vulindlela program. 41% of beneficiaries extending their house was a clear demonstration of that. And houses provided may not have taken into account individual family choices and preferences. Self-esteem, the technology of self-esteem, again, being about a group of individuals evaluating and judging their actions and rewarding themselves. This also played itself out clearly through a community that came together as cooperatives and formed collective effort, but also it's played itself out even by remarks that we saw when they said we even became stronger force, unlike when we were doing it on our own. We became together and we became a cohesive unit. So people taking charge was also a demonstration of that. But underlying that, the community came from violence. So the technology of esteem and the program realized and brought that to life because of community self-esteem that was boosted and also community cohesion. The other one was the culture of responsibilization. Here, Foucault explains this as when government transfers the risk of delivering a service to citizens. And this is what exactly happened here. In the South African context, delivery of houses is a responsibility of government. But in the pretext of self-help program, then that responsibility is somehow transferred to communities who then have to do and deliver these houses for themselves. But yet the responsibility constitutionally is by government. And also the principles of self-help, principle of sweat equity, contributing some effort was that responsibilization technology. The last one is about healthism, which is also about a situation where individuals' aspirations and goals are aligned to political goals of a government. In this program, again, clearly people who are poor, disadvantaged rural area, aspiring to own a house, found themselves having to work and contribute in delivering their houses. In that way, aligning their aspiration for a house with the political goals of government to deliver houses. So I want to conclude now. Right, I hope I did not skip something here. Let me see. Conclusion, okay. So in conclusion, I think we just bear with me. In conclusion, this is my concluding slide. Okay, it starts here. So in conclusion, the Vulindlela project itself finds itself at loggerheads. It was held between contradicting rationalities, a rationality of neoliberal intentions. It was influenced by neoliberalism, yet on the other side, an aspiration to be carrying a moral obligation to help the disadvantaged communities. So those are two stark realities. On one hand, it's neoliberal markets, individualism, enterprise commodification, profit, cooperatives acting as contractors. That's what it is. On the other side, community, poor people collectively organizing resources. So that's an important observation there. And also the study concludes that the rationale behind the Vulindlela self-help house was income opportunity for beneficiaries is heavily influenced by neoliberal ideas, which obviously the World Bank influenced how the self-help policy in South Africa came about. And also the EPHP program and Vulindlela program was also implemented according to policy, but the results shows that certain aspects of the policy were not well understood, and not all participants, including officials, really understood certain elements of the policy and how the policy could be implemented to create and realize income opportunities for beneficiaries. We also conclude that the housing needs of individuals and individual community members should not be overshadowed by an approach at a community level, because communities are made up of individuals and individuals have got family needs. So those needs get overshadowed because the approach is more around a community approach rather than being responsive to individual needs. And there was a positive relationship of the program on income opportunities and skills, and the governmentality of the Vulindlela housing program had a positive impact on income opportunities for the beneficiaries. Thank you very much.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the paper. Yeah, full of information. I think that my biggest takeaway, and thank you very much for exposing me to this, is I've always looked at technology as hardware, as gadgets, but from your paper, I see that there's also soft technology, which is more to do with the concepts. And I think that is something that we need to concentrate and focus on. There's a question that I'm going to have for you already, so I'm just giving you advance notice. There's a slide that you showed. I think it was on technology of self. Some of the percentages there really took me aback. So please, can you just craft a response as to the reasons why people were, like some of them were actually resisting some of these issues that we think that as development practitioners are really important for them. So thank you very much for that. But I would also like to thank all the other presenters for a job well done. But more importantly, to you, my colleagues, I've been tracking the number of participants and none of you has dropped out for any reason. So really, thank you very much for that. We've got maybe 15 minutes for comments, for questions, and for other contributions that the panelists and the guys that are on the group may want to make. So I just want to know if there's anyone who wants to perhaps to say something to the presenters. But also, if you've got just a comment that you'd like to make, this is very welcome. So Sipe, maybe you can also help me just to track the people that are raising their hands and so on. So if you've got an issue, please just first of all introduce yourself and then let us know if it's something that is directed to a particular presentation. Please let's also know that. So the session is now open for comments and contributions. Thank you so much. So maybe we can start. In the last paper, I think I read some issues to do with the technology of self. I don't know whether you are able to share your screen again and just go to that slide where you talk about technology. Yeah, that one. I think for me, it's I really want to have an understanding of the issues surrounding that slide. Thank you.
Right. No, thank you, Chair, for the question. Like I said, we used the theory to really understand the program and to make meaning of the behaviors of participants around income. But the technologies from the governmentality theory, one of them is this technology of self. So technology of self was more about self needs, understanding certain practices, but crafting those around individuals. It is unpacked in greater detail on my thesis, what this technology means. So what we then found was that from the data collected, if 50% of household participants are highly dissatisfied and 19% are extremely dissatisfied when it comes to the design of the house, building a choice and would have preferred to choose their own builders. So what we found was that they have received a house, but they were not happy very much about the quality. They will point at things like a crack or maybe a pipe or maybe a choice, because the program was implemented in a way that asked them to choose between two types of a house. There was a bigger size and a smaller size, but the respondents will say, even if I had chosen the bigger house, I will still be given the smaller house. So linked to this technology of self was a question we asked, which was about, would you have preferred to actually appoint your own builder? Maybe would you have preferred for government to give you a subsidy quantum? So a subsidy quantum is the amount of money that a government allocates to a household to build a house. But they don't allocate this money directly to a household. It goes through cooperatives and a community development enterprise called VDA. And then it go, then technical experts then supports the entire construction process. So the response was, yes, we would have preferred to at least have an influence in appointing a builder, and also have an influence in purchasing materials, which means maybe for their home, directing where materials should be purchased. So about 41% of household beneficiaries extended their houses, also another manifestation of a technology of self. You are giving me this, but if 41% from what they were given had extended their houses, then clearly that is a technology of self, because they had to meet their own personal needs. So overall, if you look at their satisfaction about the program, the satisfaction is good. But if you look at the satisfaction about the house and the products they have received, that's where you then see this technology of self at play, in line with the findings that I'm showing you on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much for your response. Thank you so much. I think this is very interesting, especially in terms of enhancing the participation of what we call beneficiaries. I think they've got a critical role to play in determining how things should be carried out. So I wanted to go to the first paper. The first paper really concentrated on issues to do with segregation. The paper concentrated a lot on the situation in the US. But I also just wanted to find out from the presenter, would you take that situation and place it in the African city? How would that play out? So perhaps you can help me with that. I also see that we've got Dr. Abrams on the call, on the panel. I think that perhaps maybe if you're around, you can have one or two things to say about that paper, because I think it was raising very pertinent issues. So please, can you just respond? Yeah, I see. Yeah.
Were you talking to me, good doctor?
Yeah, and I was saying that maybe after the presenters have responded to my question, perhaps because the issues that they were talking about, they were really focusing on the US, and I thought maybe you would have a response or just your contribution to that. But I wanted them to, first of all, to respond to my question about whether we can take their experiences and their research and place it in an African city. So please, please, Olaole, you can go ahead, and then Dr. Abrams can come in. You are muted at the moment.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Please go ahead.
All right. A similar case is recorded in some parts of Africa, and it can be specifically traced to South Africa. Yes, it's traced to South Africa. From our findings, it was observed that at a certain time, although not specifically linked with the COVID-19, but there was a certain time that the Black minorities or the Black majorities in some locations in South Africa were being sidelined
during an outbreak of a similar health-related issues, but it wasn't during this dispensation. To some extent, the literatures available during this dispensation, none of them pointed to the fact that COVID-19 actually has a significant effect on revealing the lingering residential segregation.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your response.
Hello? 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 Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, in addition to what my colleague just said, you see, even Nigeria similar.
Sorry, Chiprin. Please mute any device that's within that room, or kindly move to a different room where we won't have an echo of what you are speaking. Okay. Please mute yourself while you're doing that.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Clearly.
Yeah. You see, similar problems were also experienced in Nigeria and other parts of Africa. Let me give you an example of Nigeria. You see, during this pandemic, those people that are in high positions, that political class and other, what is it called? People of higher classes enjoy certain services. And this, for example, the pandemic hit hard on urban areas where urban areas where they have low income earners particularly, and ordinary citizens, as we call them here. You see, the problem is not it's a policy problem generally. Policy problem is the major problem we have in Africa. Solving this problem, there are a lot of things that need to be put in place. Like last time I discussed this in this conference, I asked questions in this conference last year on the issue of informal settlement in urban areas. This, as long as these informal settlements will exist in urban areas like slums and other informality and whatever, provided they will exist in urban areas of Africa, where we have large of them in most parts of Africa, this means that there will be a lot of issues, problems in that regard. It will be very difficult to talk about, to get this inclusivity, because there's a major forms of segregation. They have low access to infrastructure, low access to housing, low access to livelihood, and I mean general livelihood. Provided this gap is there, the problem will need to be, will be very difficult to be curtailed. Then this is a policy issue. There should be a policy that will put in place to solve this problem. The problem is all over Africa. In all African cities, we have problems. Though it's a global problem as well, but it's more glaring, more experience in Africa. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So I want to go back. Dr. Abrams, anything that you want to say?
Yes. With respect to COVID and its impact, you're absolutely right. It is a policy issue, but I would also dare to claim that it's also an infrastructure issue, in that our ability to gather the data to know where the infections are occurring in our communities, and especially in the informal communities of the camps and things that you have set up, we need to be able to know the impacts on those communities, as well as just, as you put it, regular citizens or citizens with better means of economics. And I think that's where higher education can help. in gathering some of that data. But more importantly, question that I have for you is, how is that information disseminated to the general population in Africa?
Hello, please, can you repeat that?
How is the information about COVID, disease in the communities, healthcare, how is that communicated to the average citizen?
Okay. Like in Africa, it is believed that from the reports we got from media, it is believed that urban areas, informal areas of urban settlements in Africa, they are mostly hit by the pandemic. There are other epidemics that happens in Africa, like Ebola, and then other ones that have occurred in Africa. This hits more on informal settlement than the formal settlement. It hit more hard on the informal settlement. Like even the COVID-19 in Lagos, there was a lockdown in Lagos. Lagos is highly populated. It's one of the most populated settlements in Africa. It was hardly hit by COVID-19, and there was also a lockdown, which the lockdown has so much repercussion on the low-income earners in the settlement.
We have similar problem, and I'll use Baltimore, the city of Baltimore in Maryland, in the United States. Very interesting thing there, because when you looked at the data that was being published, Baltimore City had, which is also predominantly a minority community, had the largest infectious rate for almost 2 years, up until just a few months ago. Literally, they were #1 every time the monthly counts were going out. The average citizen, the impact on the city's infrastructure was pretty severe. The inability for garbage to be picked up because the garbage collectors, the average citizens, they're living in homes where there are a lot of people in a small confinement who are all coming down with COVID, and it was spreading throughout, and basically they just didn't have anybody to pick up the garbage. And I use that as an impact to our urban infrastructure. What was interesting is that I think now Baltimore is 4th, and the counties which initially had the lowest infectious rates are now, some of these counties are now popping up as having the highest infectious rates, but for political reasons and other reasons. I think that the citizens, as people started getting sick and the frequency of getting COVID, what was interesting was all of a sudden I started seeing average citizens over the last 3 months. It was really noticeable that there were just more average citizens, average Black citizens, minority citizens, were walking around the downtown in the urban areas with masks on outside. For me, that's an interesting phenomenon, but more importantly, I think it gets back to how well we educate the people and how well do we provide those support mechanisms. So in the cities, in Baltimore, what happened was their attempt to increase knowledge, but more importantly, to get medications to the citizens, the barrier was getting access to vaccines and things. And they started doing something they called a pop-up vaccine center, where they would announce to a minority community that they would be there for 6 hours on a certain day, and no appointments were necessary. And people came and they got their shots, and the lines were incredible. They were going 5 and 6 blocks long. six people across deep kind of thing. And it gets back to something that's part of the theme, I think, for myself and that I've heard others articulate, is the innovativeness in how we gather data, the innovativeness on how we disseminate information, and the innovativeness on how we utilize our community centers as central focus points to bring people together to disseminate medications, vaccines. It was a combination of those things that you started to see a difference in terms of the infectious rate and people's ability to get vaccinated, because where they had the centers for vaccination, the biggest obstacle was transportation. I don't know, and this is where I'm interested in finding out where we have some of the same similarities here as well as in Africa. So that the technology itself, I found very interesting concept. My question to that is, how do we educate people on technology of self?
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Abrams. I will ask Tepa to respond, but first of all, I think Dr. Adeleye, your hand has been up for a long time. Do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, the chair. I will just want to lend my voice to the discussion that is going on. I think it brings to bear that it may actually be very difficult to have some definitions for some of those words which we throw around on the block. I was attending a conference some time ago, and arising from that conference, we found out that it was actually very difficult to have a definition for resilience, because what is resilience for the United States is not resilience for Nigeria. What is resilience for South Africa is not resilience for Palestine. And, you know, again, what is slum for United States, it will probably not be what a slum is in Nigeria. Hence, there is actually a need for us to have that overarching definition of what inclusiveness should be. And again, while we're having that overarching definition of what inclusiveness should be, everybody's voices must be heard, because let's look at it, the policies which government will make most times would favor probably the rich, quote and unquote, at the detriment of those that are poor. I mean, examples actually abound in terms of policies and documents that would come up. So hence, lending my voice, there's actually a need for all of us to be able to sit down and understand exactly what inclusiveness means to probably each social strata. That's the high income, the middle income, the low income, what inclusiveness actually means in African countries, what it means in emerging economies, what it means probably in sub-Saharan Africa, what it means in Asia. Then we'll be able to probably have a very robust discussion, which would give us probably solutions to this discussion we're having. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. I think the issue that you raise about clarity is really critical, and I think it's something that perhaps should form part of the agenda for the next symposium that we are going to have, because I think there's a lot of assumptions that people actually understand what we are talking about, and then all of a sudden we realize that we are going at a tangent. So I think it's an important point that you have raised. So Tepa, there was a question on the technology of self, and Dr. Abrams was asking, how do you get this message to the communities? I don't know whether you have got a quick response.
I think it's a very important question, because if the only way to address it is to look at other technologies, and you can see knowledge and power. So if you have a community that is vulnerable because they've got low levels of skills and low levels of education, so that's your first challenge, because even if you can educate them about the program and the opportunities the program seeks to deliver, and the program being designed to give them skills, and the program being designed to enable them to be asset owners, right? And their own asset, and also the program being designed to ensure there is livelihoods for them. But the mere fact that you've got a community already from an education point of view who may not be at the level where they can critique and engage constructively and take an advantage and define themselves as enterprising units that can exploit such opportunities, that's a first problem. So we've got a problem. We have to start there. And you will see this from, I think from the study, a small percentage was for people who had diplomas and degrees. I can't remember whether, I think it was less than 12% or it was 1.something%. But you would likely to see those people engaging, knowing what the program is about, exploiting and taking advantage, and even securing employment and forming businesses themselves because of the level of education. So there are those disparities. So already you've got power, knowledge, and control situation attached to someone's level of education, and it then begins there, it becomes a more complex problem. But I think we need education. But the other one is also around, there's something I wanted to mention about this. It's about policies and cohesion in policies, because I think in the South African human settlement space, like I have shared, the policy is neoliberal. The self-help, therefore, has its origin from neoliberal ideas. That is all well and good. There's nothing wrong with individualism, commodification, and markets and markets principles in the housing delivery process, because you create cooperatives who become contractors, who make money, who can be listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, whatever the case is. But what then becomes a problem is when the policy intentions are moving the other direction, because the policy intentions are more about moral commitment to help the disadvantaged. So that's what the policy of self-help I presented is about. It's about how do we create income opportunities for the disadvantaged. So then hold it there. Now, if you look at disadvantaged people having access to income opportunities, but yet the program is neoliberal, which means it's commodification of a house. How would you then reconcile the two? Because what then happens, you're leaving people who have got no resources, and you say you are assuming they should be able to have resources to help themselves. So there is that policy cohesion between what the policy intends to achieve and the broader ground norm of society and the system and the economic system, and how it actually plays itself out. But there's another paper coming from this, which is about the argument you are making about commodification of a house. If a house is commodified, poor people will not have access to a house. If poor people cannot have access to a house, we cannot realize SDG goals. All SDG goals, the centrality in those goals is a house. If you deliver a house, you give them access to water, give them access to sanitation, give them access to education, you deal with poverty. But what is happening? Commodification. You must have money to have access to it. Are we going to realize those SDG goals? So you've got an interplay of a number of dynamics around policy, and all of these things working against each other.
One of the things, and this goes to the point of community resilience as well, that we have to do is we have to monetize a number of these things that are just processes that are run by government. And when I say monetize, I'll take waste as an example. And again, I'll use the United States and where I see people can have opportunities to make money from waste through the collection. And what we have here, and I don't know, and again, I'm posing this question out there for folks to think about and to respond to as well. The ability for citizens that aren't educated to be able to be participants in the cleaning of neighborhoods, in the capturing of waste like plastics, and taking them to centralized points where it can be processed and they get paid for the collection of it. Because there is a monetized value, as you know, to taking waste and then reusing it or making it reusable, plastics that have been recycled and then broken down and then turned into other plastics, prevents those things from going into landfills, prevents them from going into the ocean. But it's part of the solution, but it is not the solution. But I think, again, as we look innovatively on how we can monetize, even with automation, which is a major disruptor, and you've seen factories that are using automated equipment to manufacture goods. I'm looking at an initiative where we look at housing and community, and part of that is to be able to, again, try to identify these things that are specific within our communities. And somebody said earlier about not copying, and which is absolutely right. It's about defining and identifying those characteristics and those factors in the community that can be monetized, that we can create more manual systems so that we have a greater participation of citizens being able to have jobs. We have this part of our phenomena here in trying to do that. It is really trying to get, the initial look was trying to get the government to provide or to get companies like for food, for example, to have supermarkets within the communities that they just didn't exist. And for those who food is a lot more expensive. Instead of trying to get other supermarkets to come there, why not start to look to develop those in either ourselves in the communities? And this gets back to that placemaking and community-based placemaking, where you want to create sustainable communities and sustainable neighborhoods. And if we attack it from that perspective, then we can create vehicles that can be replicated to other neighborhoods so that these communities start to become more economic centers, more centers where, if we're using technology, where's the technological hub for those communities so that we can distribute or have places for people that have lack of access to technology to go to have access to technology. Or if we're looking at healthcare services, if we're looking, are they embedded in the communities, or do the communities, the people in the communities have to leave their communities and travel a distance to get healthcare, to get food? And I think if it's almost in a way back to the future, where we take a look at where disruptive technologies have adversely impact our communities. And as part of lifting up our communities, we start building ways where a lot of that can start to take place in the communities in terms of either manufacturing or the types of markets or the types of centers that will house those types of things. That's the goal that I'm looking to try to do here, and to learn more about how we can do it in other places, in other communities, and to see how we can create these sort of microeconomic centers within our communities that can provide jobs as well as provide the products that the people most frequently need. And that's where I look forward to the research that a number of you are doing, and you're starting to look at innovative ways of addressing waste, solid waste. And then what do we do with that solid waste once it is being cured? Here, one of the things that we found was, you know, it's also another source of fertilizer and things. I guess the question becomes, what things in our communities can we monetize that we have overlooked, and we have looked towards technology and having those products brought to us versus creating those products within our own communities?
Thank you so much, Dr. Abraham. I think you raised some important points: disruptive technology, back to the future. I think those are things that we need to put on the table. But when you talk about solid waste management as a pathway to income generation, I think that's the direction that Sibo is talking about, which she was also talking about from waste to wealth. And so what are the impediments? What are the opportunities that we need to take? So I want to gravitate towards closing the session. I am not so sure whether there is anyone who has got something burning that they would like to share. Anyone? Okay, colleagues, I don't see any hands. So I really want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for participating in this very, very useful webinar. I don't think that we were looking at responding to all the questions and finding all the answers in this session, but I think we have started on the journey. So I would like to thank you very much. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank my co-hosts, Sipe and Asanda, for really helping to coordinate this. Thank you so much. So without any further ado, please allow me to officially close the session, and we hope to see you again tomorrow when we continue with these discussions that we hope can help us to serve our peoples better. I see your comment, Professor Dele. For sure, I think the policy issues are still out there for us to look at them and really make progress. So thank you very much. Have a very good afternoon, have a very good morning, have a very good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much, colleagues.